Some have said that the direction of your focus is the direction of your life. For the Christian, our focus is crystal clear. We are to look to Jesus, the author and the finisher of our faith. In every area of life, we are to lay aside the hindrances of our Christian journey and look to Christ as our example and strength to live the life He has called us to live. So today, let's starve our distraction and feed our focus on the Lord Jesus Christ. Welcome to the Walk Talks podcast and today's Friday Focus episode. There are a few topics in the Christian circles today that spark more controversy than the topic of music. And that's why I thought today on our Friday Focus episode, it would do us all good to hear a session that Micah Gillespie did not too long ago on the topic of music and how to cultivate taste for music that really pleases the Lord. Our ministry team served up at the Loving and Leading Conference at First Baptist Church of Milford, Ohio, just a few days ago. And it was there that Micah delivered this session. I know that portions of this session will really minister to your heart and that you'll be challenged in your own relationship with the Lord. Micah encourages all of us to come into this conversation and this topic with humility and grace as we seek to simply glorify and honor the Lord with the way that we live our lives. So now here's Micah Gillespie with a session entitled, Why Music Matters, a plea to cultivate love for excellent music.
I'm sure you're aware we live in a world that is absolutely packed full of music. No matter where we go, there's always music. In the store, in the gas station, in the mall, wherever we are, there's always music going. And the reality is that music is one of the most powerful shapers of our hearts as Christians. In order to change what we're doing, in order to change habits, we first have to even be aware of those habits and aware of why those things happen, why they are formed that way. There's a couple of these that I found very interesting. Firstly, I want us to understand taste is not neutral. It's the training of our loves. The things you desire, the things you have passion for, the things you enjoy spending time doing, they really determine your direction in life. And those things that you spend your time dwelling on and loving, those are either going to push you toward the Lord or pull you away from the Lord. C.S. Lewis says this, the goal of education is to make the student like and dislike what he ought. Our tastes are not accidents. They are trained affections. They reveal what we find delightful. What we love isn't just happenstance. What we love is a result of years of conditioning and training, whether we realize that or not. Okay, here's a good example for you. I do not love vegetables, okay? I'm just going to tell you that right now. I struggle with them. I eat corn and green beans. That's about it. However, my wife is not that way. She could live on vegetables and be happy the rest of her life. So when we started dating, I was like, young love, I'm going to try to like vegetables more. Well, I had read somewhere that in order to change your taste buds, it takes at least 21 times of trying something before your taste buds change. Interesting, okay? Free information there. And so I determined every time I have the chance, I'm going to try broccoli, the worst of them all, right? So every time that I had the opportunity, I would take one or two little gross pieces of broccoli, put it on my plate, and I would eat it. Not the stalks, because that is too far, okay? I would eat the little bushy part on top. What was interesting over time, at the end of several months, I began realizing I was ordering broccoli, not because I wanted to be a better husband someday to my spouse, but because I actually started to enjoy the taste of broccoli. Your taste in music and so many other things in life are the same way. You may not like something at first, but as you intentionally add it into your life, you can change your tastes and desires. So this brings us to the forces that shape our taste. There's a lot of interesting things here. The first is familiarity or the mere exposure effect. James Smith in You Are What You Love, very good book, by the way, writes, our loves are trained through repetition. Our hearts are like instruments that need to be tuned through regular practice. Psychologically put, we simply like the things that we do most. We like the things we hear most. You like the things that you're doing on a regular basis. Similarly, C.S. Lewis writes, "The most dangerous thing you can do is take any one impulse of your own nature and set it up as the thing you ought to follow at all costs." Because our hearts are deceitful, they're wicked. The things that we naturally desire are not good things, the Bible tells us. But we can change what our hearts desire. And I think today's world, many times, our playlists form our preferences more than our minds do. We love what we listen to most, and so our daily soundtrack is forming our hearts. I thought that was very good. Next is social belonging. This is a super strong one. I want to give us a couple of Bible verses to think about in relation to this. 1 Corinthians 15:33 says, "Be not deceived. Evil communications corrupt good manners." Similarly, Proverbs 13:20 says, "He that walketh with wise men shall be wise, but a companion of fools shall be described." Shall be destroyed. Music has the ability to create social groups. You create groups of people who like the same stuff. The people you hang out with, they're influencing every area of your life. And they're influencing what kind of music you like. We often love what our peers affirm instead of what scriptures affirm. And so we must be careful about even what our friends are listening to, because that is going to influence the kind of music that we listen to. Another one is emotional imprinting. Oliver Sacks writes, "Music imprints itself on the brain deeper than any other human experience. It calls back the emotions of our lives." Music ties to memory very, very strongly, especially in our formative years. An example of this for me is Christmas music, okay? I love Christmas. I'm a Christmas guy. I would listen to Christmas music all year round if I could. I try not to, though, because I don't want to ruin the special magical feeling of Christmas, okay? But there's this one CD that my family always listens to when we put up the Christmas tree. To this day, whenever that CD or a song from that album comes on, instantly I'm transported back in time. I'm sitting there with my family decorating the Christmas tree because it has such strong ties to those times. Another one is technological influence. Y'all are aware we live in a world full of technology. What I don't think we're many times aware of is how technology is shaping our lives, especially when it comes to music. Neil Portman says, "The medium is the metaphor. A medium's form embeds an ideology that shapes how we understand truth itself." Algorithms reward our preferences. They don't reward what we ought to do. They keep us in a comfortable loop. Ephesians says this, "So then that ye walk circumspectly, not as fools, but as wise, redeeming the time because the days are evil." Now, again, technology is a great tool. We love it. We're using it right now. I can't really exist without it in today's world. None of us can, unfortunately. It's a great tool, but it's shaping our lives, and we have to be aware of that. So many times, I think that the music that we're listening to, especially when you dig into the way that algorithms work and stuff, since I've been at camp, you do a lot of CDs and streaming and stuff. I've gotten to see the backside of what that streaming looks like, get to go into the back doors of all of that and see the algorithms and see how all of that works. And many times I'm afraid today that our algorithms are discipling us, are discipling our hearts, discipling our loves toward what's familiar, not what's excellent. And if you go to your Apple Music, Spotify, Amazon Prime, whatever you do, you're going to find your albums that you listen to, and then you're going to find suggested music, right? That suggested music is suggested to you because it's similar to what you are already listening to. So many of those algorithms are rewarding that, again, that comfortable loop. Not a problem, but we just need to be aware of it. It's influencing the way that we listen to music and the way that we love. And then another is cultural currents. Popular culture prizes emotional immediacy over depth, not death. The result is that we confuse stimulation with substance. First Thessalonians says, prove all things, hold fast to that which is good. Colossians 2 says, beware lest any man spoil you through philosophy and vain deceit, after the traditions of men, after the rudiments of the world, and not after Christ. Music is always teaching you something. And if you aren't aware of this, it's going to be teaching you worldly philosophies, worldly reasoning, worldly thinking. Francis Schaeffer in Arts in the Bible says, the arts do not exist in a vacuum. They reflect the worldview of the artist and the spirit of the age in which we live. When we stop thinking critically about music, the world will happily do the thinking for us. And its goal isn't to form virtue. It's to sell pleasure. So our musical taste is not just personal. It's spiritual, cultural, and habitual, which means that as Christians, we can choose to retrain it. I thought that was so good what Francis Schaeffer said. Our arts, the music that we're listening to, is shaping the very way that we think, and we must be aware of that. Must be aware of that. So, we've gone over the ways that our habits, our tastes are formed. These are just several. I'm sure there's more. Again, go home, look this up for yourself. Find out why you like what you like. I hope this little portion has been informative, but I want to get on to the biblical plea for discernment. I want to give us some Bible verses that we can think about in regards to what we listen to. David Gordon says, in one, Why Johnny Can't Sing Hymns, people who have been nurtured on popular music have learned to expect music to entertain them, not to edify them. When we cease to be critical of our culture's music, we cease to be critical of culture itself. The medium becomes the message, and soon the church's affections are trained more by commercial entertainment than by biblical truth. That's a scary thought. Because I don't know about you, but before I had read this statement, I had never really thought about that before. The medium becomes the message. Affections are trained more by commercial entertainment than by biblical truth. It might be true of you today that your affections, your loves, your desires, whether you even realize it or not, are being trained by the world because of the music that we're listening to. Romans 12:2 says, and be not conformed to this world, but be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind, that ye may prove what is good and acceptable and perfect will of God. We can be musically conformed, letting the culture shape our ears without question. But God calls us to renewal, not reaction. Philippians 1:9-10 says, and this I pray that your love may abound yet more and more in knowledge and in all judgment, that ye may approve things that are excellent, that ye may be sincere and without offense until the day of Christ. That phrase, approve what is excellent, is exactly what informing our taste is talking about. We need to learn to love what is worthy. So here are some practical tips in evaluating the music we're listening to, okay? First, let's examine the lyrical content. Does it reflect Philippians 4:8? Does it trivialize the things of life? And this, again, we're not talking just sacred music here. It's not wrong to listen to things outside of sacred music. I listen to tons of stuff outside of sacred music. In fact, I think that we should. It helps inform our musical brains. But even the stuff that's not sacred, we have to ask ourselves, what is this? What is the content of this song teaching me? Evaluate the musical form. Does the music itself, the rhythm, the harmony, the tone, the intensity, does it encourage reverence, joy, and contemplation? Or does it agitate and sensualize and trivialize? We need to evaluate the music itself that we're listening to. Does it promote good thoughts? Does it really complement the lyrics that are being expressed? We need to assess the emotional impact. Does it draw your heart toward worship and gratitude, or does it point inward? What is the emotional impact of the music that you're listening to? And I do want to say here too, even if the music isn't always causing strictly positive things, that's not necessarily bad. Now, obviously, you don't want to be drawn toward anger and depression, all the negative emotions, but heartache and sorrow, these are things that are over and over again in scripture. Look at David, like the whole book of Psalms just about is heartache and woe. The Lord can use those trials, those difficult emotions in our lives to draw us closer to him. But we have to be aware of what the music is doing to our emotions. We need to be aware of how it's affecting our emotions. Emotions, good and bad, aren't necessarily wrong. We need to be aware, though, of what the music is training and how it's leading our emotions. And then lastly, I want us to consider the fruit over time. This is something, honestly, before this, I hadn't thought a whole lot about. But over time, not just listening to the song over time, over and over again, but even outside of listening to specific pieces, how does that specific song affect you? A good example of this, there's this incredible arrangement by a group that I love of A Mighty Fortress Is Our God. Pause here. I normally don't actually like the hymn A Mighty Fortress Is Our God. Great words, but when you try to hymn play it, it is horrible because every single different note is a different chord. And for those of you that are congregationalists, you know that's just no fun. Dun, 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 dun. Like there's nothing you can do. So I don't love playing that hymn, but I love the lyrics in that hymn. And there's this incredible arrangement of that hymn by this group. And it is does a good job of incorporating and encapsulating the lyrics of that song. And I found myself thinking about that song because of that arrangement. Over time, it has affected me. How is the music you're listening to affecting you over time? Discernment grows through exposure and reflection. So, how do we begin to reform our tastes? To love what is excellent, not just what is familiar. This is where we get into the fun stuff. We've talked about what is music doing to us? Why do we like the music we're listening to? We've talked a little bit about some biblical principles that can inform our listening, but what are some really practical, everyday things that we can implement? And I hope that these are helpful. First off, I want us to think about this in an attitude of humility and curiosity. Cultivating taste requires an act of humility. It means admitting that I may not yet love what's most beautiful. I thought that was a very good quote. And I have found that even in my own life, especially when I got to college, I didn't grow up listening to like a ton of classical music, honestly. I thought it was boring. I thought I didn't like it. Then I got to college, had to listen to it, had to play it. And I found by force that I actually did like classical music. And I found after reassessing my likes and dislikes with a little bit of humility that, hey, you know what? What I thought before wasn't actually right. And then when you approach it with humility, it can lead to curiosity. And that is a good thing when evaluating our music. So I want us to think about that. Excellence often feels foreign before it feels comfortable. Remember the broccoli, okay? Broccoli is good for you. I knew that, but I didn't like it. In the first 20 years of my life, broccoli did not feel good on my tongue. It did not like it. But once I intentionally started introducing it into my life, once I intentionally started making myself eat it, I began to enjoy it. It's the same way with music. A really helpful book for this, especially for people who aren't super musical, is Aaron Copland's What to Listen for in Music. Aaron Copland was really like the father of Western music. So you think of like, especially like Western music, when you think of like the cowboy music and that kind of stuff, Aaron Copland historically is known as one of the first American composers. He has a book called What to Listen for in Music. And if you just want to understand music itself better, that's a really helpful book. I think I also listed it at the end of the notes. It's a really practical, relatively short book that can just kind of help inform you about the basics of music. So I don't know if that would be helpful to somebody. But here are some practical ways to start cultivating your tastes. The first is intentional exposure. Being intentional in listening to different music. Slowly emphasis on the word slowly, introduce great works of beauty. Don't rush into it. If you have not spent much time listening to, let's say, classical music, don't go away from here saying, I'm only going to listen to classical music from now on. You're going to hate it. That is a great way to hate it. Going back to the whole food analogy, it's the same way. A funny story. Several years ago, we as a team, the four of us traveling, decided that we wanted to take a detox diet. Has anybody ever heard of detox diets? I don't know why we thought that was a good idea, but we wanted to try a detox diet. And so before we started our detox diet the night before, like, we're not eating like good food for a week. So our last night, we're going to go out on the town, like eat up all the good fried food, like have dessert, the whole bit. Less than a day into this detox diet, I was like sicker than a dog. You can ask everybody else we're traveling with. It was horrible, right? Because I went from eating all of this normal food that I was eating, all of a sudden basically eating nothing and only like vegetables again. And my body was like revolting. Okay. You're going to do the same thing if you try to go straight to now different music. You're not going to like it. Introduce it slowly. Don't binge that music and begin with approachable things. Okay. I think I listed out some classical and any of the Bach stuff. A really great gateway music listening is like film scores. Listening to like Star Wars, listening to Lord of the Rings, listening to stuff like that, because it has its roots in the classical music, but it still is kind of entertaining and somewhat comfortable to us. That's a great way to get us listening to the classical music. Kind of bridges both worlds of what we're used to versus the classical. Listen to choral sacred music. Expose yourself to greatness, and lesser things lose their charm. I thought that was very interesting. So intentional exposure, active listening. Has anybody ever heard of active listening before? Does anybody know what that is? Okay, like two of us. This is great. Active listening is listening intentionally. So that is where you just turn on a piece of music and you sit and listen to it while not doing anything else. This sounds like really strange at first. A great way to do some active listening is go to a concert. When you're at a concert, you're listening. That's all you're doing is listening. Go to an excellent symphony or something really cool like that. That is a great way to instantly change your perspective. Go to a live concert. When you're actively listening, move beyond just the idea of music being background noise. That's not a bad thing. Ask my wife. I always have music playing. But active listening is when you're really intentional and just listening to the music. A way to start practicing active listening is listen to a piece and then be able to say a specific thing or two that you like or dislike about the piece. That's a great way to get you to start actively listening, is name specific things that you like or dislike. Be able to give a reason of why you would listen to that song again or why you wouldn't. That's a great way to get you to start listening actively. Listen for the melody, the harmony, counterpoint, structure, and emotion, all of that stuff. Attend live concerts. This was a great book, a great quote from a book I was reading. The best music rewards attention the way that scripture rewards meditation. I thought that was really good. Or just like another good book that you've read. How many of you guys have like a book that you've read like 4 or 5 times or at least more than once because you just loved it so much? And just like the Bible, you can read the same passage, but over time you start picking out different things from the different passages that you've read over and over again. Music is the same way. It's obviously not comparable to the Bible. Music is the same way. You listen to it over and over again and you pick out things that you hadn't heard before or hadn't enjoyed before. And then learn the language of music. Be able to understand the basics of music, the form, texture, harmony, rhythm. Be able to just know what each of those things are. Know what the different kinds, especially in classical music. People oftentimes hear the word classical music and say, I don't like classical music, without realizing that within the realm of classical music, especially, there's like tons of subgenres, right? There's definitely kinds of classical music I do not enjoy. 20th century music, for instance, dislike it, okay? But other forms of classical music and time periods are great. So begin to learn the language of music, and that will help you appreciate the music. Again, read Aaron Copland's book, and understand just the different types of music that there are. And this will help us really begin to appreciate what we're listening to. And then contextualize what you hear. How many of you guys have ever listened or sung a song in church? Great, love the song. And then you hear like the backstory of the hymn. One really good example of this is "It Is Well With My Soul." How many of you guys know the background of "It Is Well"? Okay, "It Is Well." When you find out, yeah, this song is great, we love it. And then you find out that the guy who wrote it out on the ocean while he was going over the place where his daughters were dead at the bottom of the ocean floor. And yet he's writing "It Is Well With My Soul" while looking down at where his daughters are dead on the ocean floor. Like when you understand that, it gives a whole new light and meaning to the hymn "It Is Well." You can do that with every piece of music you listen to. Look up the composer, look up the history, look at when he wrote it, look at why he wrote it. That helps us appreciate what we're listening to. And then another great way to cultivate your taste is by talking about the music you're listening to. Share music that you've just discovered. This is something I love doing. My siblings and I are constantly sharing new songs that we found. It's a great way to encourage other people to listen to different music, and maybe people will start sending you stuff. That's a great way. Again, attend live performances, especially with other people. That way you can talk about what you heard. Discuss beauty the way that we discuss theology. Now, for those of us that aren't theologians, you're like, okay, I'm not really going to talk about it all that much then. But this is for you Bible people, okay? Talk about music. And then, again, be able to articulate specific likes and dislikes. Taste grows best in community, not in isolation. And then finally, probably the hardest out of all of these is participate. Participate in music. When you can, sing in church, play instruments, try taking your hand at composing, or maybe you're just writing lyrics. This is a great way to just begin to appreciate all that goes in even writing music in itself. If you try it once and be like, okay, I could not do that, I'm never doing that again, that's great. At least you understand now what goes into writing music, and you can appreciate excellent music because of that. And then I want to talk about the fruit of cultivating our tastes. Many times when we start changing and intentionally thinking about what we're listening to, we're going to find that we can have deeper worship with the Lord. And this is not just in a corporate setting, but even in your own personal time at home. Maybe you listen to music while you're doing devotions. If you don't, that's a great thing to do. Is a side thing for free. A great thing to add to your devotions is read through a hymn text every morning while you're reading through your Bible. That's a great way, again, appreciate music, appreciate good music, read through a hymn text. Our hymns are filled with incredible truth and theology so many times. You'll find that you have emotional maturity. You'll start being able to discern between sentimentality and sincerity. Remember going all the way back to the beginning where we were talking about the world prioritizes the shallow feelings, and we many times mistake that for real depth. You'll have cultural discernment, the ability to see through manipulations of feelings. This is really, really helpful. Again, just being aware of what the world is trying to indoctrinate us with. Just being aware of what the music is doing in your own heart can help you fight against that. And it'll oftentimes stir up gratitude. Beauty received as a gift, not consumed as entertainment. When we discipline our ears, we sanctify our loves. By intentionally shaping what and how we listen to, we shape our capacity to love what is truly beautiful and good. Musical discernment is not merely an aesthetic exercise, it's a moral and spiritual one. I want to end with a quote by Bach. Many people don't know that Bach was actually a Christian. I am very confident we will see him in heaven one day. At the bottom of each and every piece that he wrote, whether it was for church or not, he wrote, "To God alone be the glory." He wrote it not in English, but I'm not going to try to say it in the other language. He wrote, "To God alone be the glory," in every piece that he wrote. He said this: "The aim and final end of all music should be none other than the glory of God and the refreshment of the soul." That was so good. This incredible, arguably the most well-known composer in the world and all of history wrote that. That is the goal and aim of all music. Our musical tastes are not trivial. They are reflections of our loves. Music shapes who we are, what we feel, and how we worship. The world trains us to crave what's easy and shallow, but God invites us to delight in what is excellent, true, and beautiful.
Micah has given all of us a lot to consider today, and I trust that as a response to what you've just heard, there would be an honest and humble evaluation of the music that you are listening to. Music that fills your car, fills your home, fills your earbuds. Music that is not just entertaining you, but is shaping you to be somebody. May God help each and every one of us to be discipled by excellent, godly, spirit-filled music as we seek to please the Lord with the way that we live our lives and with the way that we shape our lives. We hope that you enjoyed today's episode of Friday Focus, presented by the Walk Talks podcast. Make your plans to join us next week for another set of podcast episodes that will encourage you in your walk with the Lord Jesus Christ.